Station 51, engine 27, engine 32, truck 105.
You're listening to The Fire Break with Steve Wolf.
Welcome back to The Fire Break. I'm Steve Wolf. As you know, The Fire Break is sponsored by the amazing and generous people at Team Wildfire, of which I'm one, full disclosure. Anyway, we have got some really cool stuff for you today. I've got Cody Hill with us, and I've been trying to get Cody Hill on the podcast forever, but, you know, schedules and emergencies and fires and tornadoes and floods. Anyway, we have overcome this because we have what? Resilience. And Cody is the Associate Director of Resilience and Emergency Response at the illustrious Stanford University, where I did not go. Went to Columbia instead. What are you going to do? I was an East Coast kid. Cody, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Hi, Steve. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So what is going on in your work at Stanford these days?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, Stanford, everybody knows Stanford University as this research institution, this place of learning and education. But not everybody knows that Stanford's also a private landowner. We have around 8,200 acres of it, most of it, some of it, and the WUI, as everybody's learning more about the wildland-urban interface. And since 2021, we developed a wildfire management plan that looked at our WUI and identified areas where we wanted to perform some land stewardship activities to reduce the risk to ourselves and to our neighbors. We want to be good neighbors, good stewards of the land. And so that's been going on for the past couple of years.
Okay. And what does that look like? Okay. How many programs with how many sets of initials did you have to learn?
You know, I've learned a ton from a lot of people that know a ton more about this than I do, but I've been lucky enough to work with some just amazingly brilliant people that all bring their different energies, different expertise to this field. But in 2021, after we did that assessment, we went out and we did some of the more traditional vegetation management, right? Whether it's limbing up some trees, managing some grasslands, reducing the fuel loads, right? Those fire fuel loads from our landscape. And since probably about 2023 or so, we asked ourselves, what does it mean to go from having like a wildfire management plan to having a holistic wildfire resilience program? And I think when you start to look at it through the lens of wildfire resilience, it gets more multifaceted. And that's where we want to talk about technology, early detection, more rapid response, more community partnership with neighboring agencies who are actually the boots on the ground responding to these types of events. And also looking at the more challenging forms of vegetation management like prescribed fire or doing pile burns, which I think everybody's starting to have a better understanding of the benefits of that. But I still think that there's a lot of education that has to go out to the community when you're performing those types of activities.
Absolutely. So it's been quite an education for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a great
What
journey.
were you doing before this?
Well, I've been at Stanford for almost 7 years now, but I have a background in kind of safety, security operations, emergency management, utility operations, and a little bit of land management. And so when this opportunity came up to focus on this, what I really consider to be an emerging field out of all the different segments of industry right now, wildfire management, response, all those things that go into wildfire resilience really are an emerging area, an emerging arena. Not just for California, right? I was just reading an article about the increase in wildfires from a global perspective, whether it's the United Kingdom. There's a big fire in Ireland I was just reading about. And so we've actually kind of reached out and connected to some of those global partners. We have a firefighter and a postdoctoral researcher coming out from the United Kingdom in June to look at our wildfire detection system that we installed. And that was an incredible partnership. As we know, nothing gets done in a silo, right?
Right.
And so we partnered with...
That's why nothing gets done, because everything's in a silo.
Right. And so we partnered with our local fire safe council from Santa Clara County, Seth Chalet, who's been a great partner for us, we partnered with Palo Alto Fire, who actually does a lot of the response on our main campus, and also Woodside Fire Protection District that does the response for more of our foothills area, our WUI area. And between us four entities and some other partners, we identified a product and we installed 50 wildfire detection sensors between our three different land areas. These are the same sensors that the state of Hawaii recently installed as well. It's the N5 product.
Okay. It's a sniffer.
It is. It's a solar paneled carbon sniffer, right? And it's sensitive. We had it pick up a road flare the other day off of one of our major highways.
Anymore.
Well, someone used it. Their car was on the side of the road, and someone's put a road flare.
Now they're going to start a fire. Okay.
Thankfully, it didn't start a fire, but
Good.
It was one of we were able to detect it, and this as we're testing this technology, right? And that's one of the things that I love about working at Stanford is we kind of have this understanding that we want to use Stanford resources as a living lab, not just to benefit Stanford, but to share what we learn with our partners, our neighbors, and other people that we're collaborating with to say, we were able to test this. This is what we learned, and we're happy to share it with people.
That's great. So, and it doesn't really matter what the outcome of the test is, right? If it's successful, you share that. And if it wasn't successful, then you share that and tell people, don't waste your time going down this alley.
Absolutely. Every failure is a step towards a win, right?
That's how I think of it. Yeah. That's why I'm winning so much. So many failures.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. So this job sounds like it was really perfect for you, combining so many areas of your interest. And
definitely.
At what point do you ever get to feel ahead of the curve on this? Because it seems like we went from, wildfires happened once in a while to now like wildfires are overtaking us and we're trying to catch up academically, technically, tactically, strategically. And it feels like, research takes a long time and we don't have a long time. What does that feel like?
That's a great question. It definitely, there's a sense of being overwhelmed, right? Because every day there's a new report, there's a new research area of focus, whether it's some of the research that is happening at Stanford about how chromium gets affected in the soil when it's exposed to high temperatures of wildfire, and it becomes a more toxic form of chromium. And it's like, wow. And then there's the air quality concerns, right?
Right.
And then it's, well, when a wildfire comes through, what species of plants replaces? Is that a chance for the invasive species to come in?
And does that depend on what you treated the fire with?
Right.
If you drop phosphorus on the, phosphorus-containing retardants, well, maybe the native plants don't like phosphorus and something else does. Something more flammable comes back.
Absolutely. So to answer your question, it is hard to stay apprised of the entire wildfire arena. I think what helps me stay focused is saying these are the 2 to 3 elements that I want to focus on for this 2 to 3 year time span. And for us, it was getting early wildfire detection in place. We were lucky enough to already have 2 of the alert wildfire cameras on our property that are part of that 1,000 camera network, which is an amazing accomplishment for the state of California. And I think UC San Diego, who's helped to lead that. And as we know, that's a public camera system. Anybody can Google alert California, look at those 1,000 cameras. Again, that they use AI to identify fires. So we already had 2 AI cameras on the property, and then these 50 sensors kind of surrounding us. That was what we think was something. It was within the realm of possibility, right? It was there. It was let's make a plan, let's execute, let's install, let's test, and let's share the story. And so far, we've had real positive results. And I think that the second thing that we really want to focus on is our partnership with neighboring jurisdictions, right? Is understanding what our neighbors are doing, whether that's landowners, whether that's authorities having jurisdiction. I think those 2 things really stood out from us in a kind of a more short-term time frame. And again, I'm focused on this kind of resilience for the campus, but there's so much other academic research going on in the different schools and departments. And so it's a lot of great people working on a lot of different things. And so I was trying to stay targeted on my 2 to 3 areas.
Yeah, I guess that helps keep the sanity. But
Yes.
somewhere in the back of your mind is like, well, there's these other 27 things. I sure hope someone's working on those things just as much as I'm working on these things. Otherwise, these things won't matter. Because right, we all,
Absolutely.
when the party happens, we all have to have our casseroles done.
Yeah, absolutely. And in that light, one of the things that stood out to me after watching the horrific events of the wildfires in January in LA, and then maybe a little bit lesser known event was the wildfires around Pepperdine University, right? They had a fire surround their campus, but they were so prepared. They had hardened defensible space. They had the right building materials. And what really stood out to me is they had the right planning and communication protocols in place. They had worked with county fire. They were prepared to communicate with their campus about, hey, this is what we do. We shelter in place because we're prepared to do it, which was a different message than what the county was sending out as a whole, right?
Right.
But they, and because of Watch Duty, that amazing app that has just grown, some amazing work done there. People like me who have an interest and others can look at the app and stay apprised of what's going on in those fires and see the lessons learned, see the communications that are getting put out by, emergency response professionals, public information officers, to see what's happening. And so I think if there was a takeaway for me from observing those events, it's how do I raise awareness about CAL FIRE's slogan here? Know your zone. Do you know your county evacuation zone? And when I ask people this question, they're like, I'm not sure that I do. And I think that really that was a really important component to the events that we saw during that time.
Right. God forbid they should say if you're, left of Alameda and west of San Jose, like that people would know. But if they say, oh, zone 283, you're at level 2.
Yeah.
These means nothing to people.
Yeah. So we're working on some public communication, public education elements around, if you're in a wildland urban interface, you should be familiar, whether it's your work, whether it's your home, whether it's your loved ones, you should make sure that you understand how those evacuation zones work and know the difference between a warning and an order, right? And
right. Okay. I went to look up my zone here in Boulder, and the best I could pull up was a low resolution PDF of, several counties area. And there's a little area here. And I couldn't quite tell, is that my neighborhood or am I the one above it or below it? Like, it was really, really poor communications. And I actually had to call and ask the fire chief because the information online wasn't clear enough. And I suspect, other people have similar challenges.
Absolutely.
Can I ask you about the N5 system for a second? Or
please.
Generically, how do those systems work in terms of detecting sources that are upwind of them?
Oh, it's a great question. That was one of my...
Or downwind, I should say. Right.
Yeah.
Upwind, downwind. If the fire is downwind of the sensor, are any molecules fighting the current to come back up and ping the sensor?
I'm not an expert, but I'm just going to say probably not. And I'm going to say that was one of the questions I asked. I said, well, if I know where my critical assets are, I know what I'm trying to protect, that means that I want to encompass that in sensors unless I feel really confident about the predominant wind direction. And knowing 99% of the time the wind blows this way, so I only have to have my sensors over here.
Right.
But that's again going back to by partnering with our neighbors and making that network expansive and covering more than just our land, covering other land outside of Stanford University. That's what allowed for us to feel really confident that we had placed those sensors in strategic locations that regardless of wind direction, we should pick up a fire in our WUI.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how those datas parse out in the end. There's a gentleman in Israel with a system called FireWave, and instead of putting out sensors, he's putting out microphones. So microphones are omnidirectional, and he can triangulate the source of the unique frequencies put out by fires. And I thought, well, that's cool because that gets us around the wind issue.
That is neat. It's very interesting to learn. I'm calling it like the forensic science behind fires, right? It's like,
Yeah.
well, it has a chemical signature in the air. It's
Right.
got a specific sound signature or resonance. And yeah, it's who would have thought we'd be talking about like forensic fire science in such a broad situation.
Well, the fire department probably never thought we'd talk about it, but luckily they get the benefit of both academia and private enterprise, which are really expanding their toolkit quite a bit, whether they like it or not. Right? And I mean, it is a field that's not known for its self-advancement, rapidity. But luckily, a lot of players are coming together, and everyone's kind of working together. So here's what I know. Here's what you know. Here's a new idea. Tell me why this wouldn't work, or does this warrant more experimentation? So you're living in exciting times there right now, aren't you?
Yes, absolutely. And I feel like we're lucky enough that the greater community is also following along, right? There's a lot of concern in the community, but we've been able to perform some vegetation management, some eucalyptus tree removal in particular, that I don't know that we could have accomplished that task 7 years ago. Like when we went to remove a grove of eucalyptus trees that was along an evacuation route for local community adjacent to our land, we got positive comments from people. Thank you for removing eucalyptus trees. And don't forget to treat the stumps to make sure they don't grow back. And that was so comforting and just really welcome feedback from the community, where if it was 7 or 10 years ago, I don't know that the education or the awareness was out there about the dangers of eucalyptus trees, about how they're just so combustible. And so I think it is exciting times, and I think as a whole, we're all on this journey.
Did you get a lot of pushback from the koala bears?
Thankfully, there was no koala bears in our eucalyptus trees.
Goodness, good, lucky for you. I know there's some research being done by one of your compadres on replacing the eucalyptus trees with banana trees, which not only provide food, but because they're so high in potassium, they're inherently quite flame resistant.
Wow, I hadn't heard that. It's just so many things going on. It's hard to keep up with it all.
Yeah, right. So what you said, you're focused like on three things. What are those three nails that you're hammering?
It's using Stanford as the living lab for wildfire detection.
Living lab.
We're in that testing phase now. We're going to be in September or October. We'll be at 1 year of installation.
Wow.
So that's really exciting. The second one is partnering with our neighbors, whether it's private landowners, whether it's responding jurisdictions, to find ways to respond to fires better, making sure that the gates are in the right location, the locks, the keys are all working the way that they're supposed to, the right people have the right access, and just as importantly, that people who shouldn't have access don't have access, because we've seen the numbers behind what starts fires, right? And so I think we have to be right. We have to be conscious of that. We have to be intelligent with that and make sure that we're managing our properties responsibly, while making sure that people can access areas that they should be able to access. And so the third one is kind of where I could lump in like 3 to 5 different elements. Yeah. But what's really been exciting is over the last year or two, we've been able to bring Stanford students onto the wildfire resilience team. And they get a fellowship, if you will, through our Office of Sustainability. And they come to us and say, this is what we want to work on. And it was because of one student in particular whose parents were firefighters from the state of Montana. This individual really helped us with executing our pile burns on the edge of our property and help with some of the research behind that, measuring the different temperatures, the impacts on soils. And so it's so exciting to see students at Stanford working in the wildfire resilience space as a part of our team. And, as a lifelong industry, corporate professional, I just wouldn't have thought even 3 or 4 years ago that I'm going to be partnering with a Stanford graduate student on executing pile burns on Stanford land. So it's just the
That's
way
exciting.
how amazing it turns out.
So whether it's a pile burn is nice because it's relatively low intensity as fire goes, but you're still taking the carbon that was in the atmosphere that then became wood and putting it back in the atmosphere. And there's some movement now towards exploring wood vaults where you bury it. And I'm wondering if you've done any experimentation. Take a backhoe and trench out a spot, put the wood in there, cover it back over, and then you retain the carbon in the soil instead of the atmosphere.
Sure. I've heard a little bit about that. I guess, again, one of those thousands of threads that you can pull on.
Yeah.
So not too familiar with the vault concept besides just a very rudimentary level. Learned a little bit more about curtain burners, where they put the logs inside of, I'm going to call it a furnace, and they burn it and then they capture the carbon, right? And then it starts to get beyond my
And they make
expertise.
biochar out of it, right?
That's exactly what it's called. And they have some alternative uses for it. And I know that they've done that locally here in the Bay Area at some different sites. Just haven't had a chance to really fully understand what fuels the curtain burners run on. Right? What are we're all very
Oxygen
concerned
feeds,
about,
yeah.
right?
Oxygen and high-powered fans, right? Because the
Right.
more oxygen you put in there, the more efficient the burn, and the less waste product escapes. And biochar is super cool.
It is.
I don't know if you like when you get exposed to the anti-smoking, messages, and they say, that if you opened up all the alveoli in your lungs, it would be like, 100,000 square miles of surface area. Well, biochar is like that. So it's these little carbon balls with tons and tons of surface area that have pores large enough to hold water molecules. And so they become basically like these sponges that they found them even thousands of years old in ancient Aztec gardens, where they would dig up the soil, they'd install a layer of biochar. They probably didn't call it that. And then they put the soil back over, and then it retains moisture in there so that the crops could grow well, even in drought periods. So that's kind of the most common use for biochar right now. But when you move off from these three nails onto the other ones, if that's one of them, you'll probably discover a whole bunch of new uses for biochar.
That's like an infinite arena of possibilities.
Yeah, right. So how do you stay focused?
I ask myself when I'm investing, financially, and as we know, these activities are not inexpensive, right? But these are risk reduction activities that benefit the university and our neighbors in so many different ways. And so I ask myself when we're investing resources into these types of activities is what's the benefit? If I had to explain how I invested this capital, how did I reduce the risk to Stanford? How did I reduce the risk to our neighbors? And I think that staying focused on what's the benefit, so that we don't go down right now being so early on, right? We want to stay focused. We don't want to end up going down tangents and using resources that don't benefit, the greater good. And I think really keeping that perspective in mind, like if I had to report to, the senior leaders at Stanford on how I invested our resources, I want to feel good about the outcomes. And sure, if we failed, that's okay too. But I want to say that we failed and we learned and we took the next step. I think we have to embrace failure. It's the first step towards success.
Right. But as a living lab, you don't want to be overly influenced. Oh, well, I'm only going to do the things that I know work because I got to justify the benefit. Like as a lab, you want to be exploring all the, the blue sky ideas as well that might reap massively more rewards or might fall on their face.
Indeed. I think that's like finding blue sky and finding the golden zone, right? We don't want to be so far out that the chance of it being successful is 1%, but we want to be trying out things that do have a potential, that have, shown some type of foundational success, right?
Okay.
Yeah. I think that really helps guide us.
A likelihood of payoff.
Yeah, some foundation of success, absolutely.
So if you're looking at metrics, then how do you know when you're done? How do you know when your relationships with the community are as good as they need to be, and now you're just maintaining them? And likewise for your observational technology with your sensors and your cameras, like when do you say, okay, we have enough sensors here, we're good, our response time can be minimized now, or I can move on to the next project?
Yeah, especially in this arena, I don't know. It's like, of course, there's always annual maintenance, right? Is we're constantly having to put in fire breaks every year, and sometimes we need to do it so early that we have to go back and do it twice in one season, and that's not ideal. But but I think we realize that if that's the right thing to do, then we need to do it. Additionally, I just don't think we'll ever be done. When we identified the areas of dense vegetation that we needed to treat, we knew that we're going to, we keep asking ourselves, do we need to go back every 2 to 3 years? Is it 4 to 5 years? And of course, that varies by every location.
Right.
And we're actually trying to develop a scientific method on what we measure to determine which areas we treat based on vegetation type, fuel density, location around critical assets, to really determine where are we going to invest that capital this year, where are we going to invest the capital next year. And it's a really difficult question to answer. It's like, well, we've got 20 to 30 targets. We did this set this time, and it's been 2 years in this set. It's been another 3 or 4 years in this set of areas. And when do we go back? Well, what about this emerging risk? That wasn't a part of the original risk assessment. And so I don't know that we'll ever be done. I think that this is going to become this program area for us and many other landowners and managers. It's a new thing that will never go away.
I
don't think the risk is going to go away.
No, the risk is not going to go away. No. So how many environmental factors are you monitoring to the goal that your data would be exportable and then usable in other areas? So you could tell somebody, 1,000 miles away, if you have this much rainfall and this type of vegetation and these number of rain days and these number of dry days and these, ambient conditions, then this is likely a prescription that will work for you. And to the degree that your conditions vary, here's a good suggestion on a different prescription.
Yeah, that is a great question. And I wish we had the answer to all of that. We've taken some steps towards achieving that criteria in our most recent update report that we posted on our website, wildfireresilience.stanford.edu, where you can look at all of our documentation and the research that we've done and the things that we've measured in trying to determine, like you just described, that prescriptive methodology based on all those different factors on what's the best practice. Because that's what we're still kind of at right now, right? What's the best practice for managing this type of environment, this type of landscape? In California, they just released different fire severity zone maps, right? Just updated after many, many years. And we're all looking at those wondering and wanting to learn more about how those might impact.
Wondering who came up with this?
Right? Yeah. And how
mean anything?
How would they be applied to policies and requirements? I think that's the next evolution with those maps, to further help inform our prescribed treatments.
Wasn't a sad thing about those maps, though, that your risk level is determined by this map? It's almost like preordained, and your risk level number doesn't change based on mitigation that you do to your property. And you want to feel like, well, if each property owner does the correct risk reductions for their property, then they made the whole community safer. But that doesn't filter back upstairs to tell people, hey, this number no longer applies to us because we did these things.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult situation that we're seeing in the WUI in California. Mm-hmm. With we could I can't talk a lot about the whole insurance market, but I mean, we've all read the articles, right?
Right.
I'm
And it's not
definitely
looking
not.
good.
It's not looking good for a lot of people, and that's unfortunate. And I hope that the state of California and all the different entities that work on that are focused on trying to find a solution for folks that are having a difficult time with that. It's really unfortunate that some folks have lost their insurance policies and had to move, and it's
That's
just a very
terrible.
difficult thing. It is terrible. It really is.
Well, I talked to my insurance company, right? Hey, I did this. I have 4 acres of land here. I removed all but 3 trees. I put in a sprinkler system. It's heat activated, blah, blah, blah. Did all, no gutters, zone zero is all stone, like all that. And I said, okay, so now what would my premium be? Like, you're still in zone 4. Your premium doesn't change. So you're almost taking away the economic incentives for people to invest in doing the work.
Yeah, that's a difficult situation as a homeowner.
I think that's about all you can say about it. Tell me what you said you put in fire breaks and then you maintain the fire breaks sometimes annually or biannually.
Mhm.
How do you define a fire break and under what conditions is it a fire break?
It's a great question. That's something that we've worked on over the last year or two is, again, developing partnerships with the authorities having jurisdictions saying, this is what we've done every year for the last, for a very long time.
Right.
Do you have any recommendations for us? Do you have any guidance? And, for the most part, they say that we're doing a good job. And we have a major Highway
It's an easy
280.
answer though, right?
Well, and I do feel like we do a great job. We have a major highway that runs through our land, Highway 280, and
Right.
we put those fuel breaks in on either side of it, and many other areas too. Um, and so, yeah, showing them that and always looking for opportunities to do more, I think, is one of the things that we're always open to feedback. We're always trying to seek other people's opinions and guidance, any concerns that they have. Because sometimes folks have concerns, but they don't know about all the things we're doing. And
Yeah.
so, we've only had our wildfire resilience website for maybe 2 years now, which kind
Okay.
of compiles all of these activities that we're doing and shows these formal reports that we publish. And that's really made a big difference, I think, in the community and with authorities as well, saying, yeah, here, if you have any questions about what we're doing, happy to meet with you. Please check out our documentation. And I think it's gone a long way in kind of helping folks understand how we're managing those 8,200 acres.
It's a big project.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, like, not that we would ever want to discourage people from putting in fire breaks because they have their purpose. But when we see, like in the Fort McMurray fire, embers coming across a 2-mile lake and lighting the whole town on fire, then you wonder, like, okay, what's, that 16 feet of mineral soil going to do, under those conditions? And while maybe in many fires that would make a difference, those aren't the fires we're worried about, right? We're worried about the edge cases because those are the ones that take out, entire communities or campuses. And I haven't seen a fire break that, short of clearing a 40-mile swath, is going to be resistant to ember cast and ember bed landings. So is the idea just, we're going to do the best that we can, weighing the risk against the resources?
I think you could apply that to a lot of different scenarios. I think the ember, for any landowner, for anybody who's managing facilities or homes, buildings, ember cast is a major concern, right? It's just so devastating. It's so hard to control. But I think there's been a lot of education and a lot of folks who have embraced home hardening. I think we've seen some really positive information out there about what you can do to prevent ember cast from igniting your homes. And I think we need to continue to explore that and continue to incorporate that into our building designs and our homes that are on our property.
And how many homes are on your property versus academic structures?
There's a corner of Stanford known as kind of the faculty housing area, and there's approximately 900 homes on that corner of campus.
That's a lot of homes.
Yeah,
So when
absolutely.
and is the construction on the homes different than the construction on the academic side? The academic side when I remember, it looked like a lot of stucco and
Yeah,
not very flammable stuff.
yeah. Our homes are more traditional residential homes. A lot of them are different materials, different makeups. The good news is that our faculty homes are not in our high risk WUI area. They're much more in the city setting. Um, Not to say, again, I don't want to take away from Embercast because we know how far that can travel, but they're not in a wooded Oakland
Okay,
or in a eucalyptus grove for that matter.
right. Whereas if their homes burned down, then as Groucho Marx would have said, they'll have to go back to sleeping in the classroom.
Hopefully, it doesn't come to that.
Yeah, that's more for the students than the professors, right? That's good. What are you most excited about in your upcoming projects? Like when you leave, when you clock out at the end of the day, what's the thing that comes home with you, either by virtue of worry or enthusiasm?
Mm. Well, I want to talk more about good fire, prescribed fire. That's what I'm the most excited about. I think it's an incredibly challenging task, and I like challenging tasks. And I think that it's the right thing to focus on because it's a great tool for fire fuel management. And we're working with different jurisdictions now on what is the right strategy to implement more good fire, and to also involve some of our local tribes that have used good fire for some time, right? And we want to partner with them and seek their guidance and their participation in some of these events. So I'm really excited for good fire, prescribed fire, with the partnership with the greater community to do that.
Yeah, and the more good experiences you have with it, how many good experiences does the community have to have with wildfire to offset the one or two fringe cases where good fire turned bad?
Great question. I don't know.
I don't know either, because if you've ever heard of a single plane crash, you think about it every time you get on a plane, right?
Yes,
And it's like it's something that statistically, you don't have to worry about, but because of how visual it is or how destructive it is, that's the thing. When the Hindenburg went up in flames, like that was the end of lighter than air travel, pretty much to this day, unless you're the Goodyear blimp pilot.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So when you have these escape fires like we had in Arizona, is it Arizona, Utah? No, Arizona, New Mexico. There we go. Thank you. I knew it'd come. All right. So those experiences make everyone who hears about good fires like, oh, I don't want to have that around here. We're not going to set a fire. And the result is, they just build the fuel load every year.
Yeah, and I think that's that education piece, right?
Right.
Let's start small. Let's pilot, right? We love pilots at Stanford, and so it's how do we pilot and proof of concept, show that we can do it well, and build upon that success and get a little bigger each year, maybe burn a little bit more acreage each year. That's kind of the goal. We're getting there. It's going to take some time.
You'll get there. My last question for you. What's the hat you're wearing in your LinkedIn picture?
It's a Stetson straw hat.
It is. Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice. As
a fair-skinned person, you might resonate with this. I go to the dermatologist once a year because I have to. And so they highly recommend the full brim hat, and it works just fine.
Well, it looks good on you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, I really, thank you for the work that you're doing. I know it's a lot, and it covers so many areas. There's there's the science side, there's the cultural side, there's the psychological side, the educational piece. So you got your hands full, but it looks like you're having fun at it.
Definitely having fun, learning a lot, and just so thankful to everybody that supports us. The Wildfire Resilience team is made up of over 20 people, right? And I'm lucky enough to help coordinate their efforts, and many of them are just amazing project managers that are doing their own work, their own accord. So it's not just me. There's a whole army of amazing people that are doing this, and I'm just so incredibly thankful for all that the team does.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank so much for taking an hour of your time to join me here on the Fire Break.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. Cody Hill at Stanford University, helping to make the community and the campus safer in ways that benefit not only them, but anyone who gets to look at their research. And Cody, could you just repeat your website for me?
Sure. The Wildfire Resilience website is wildfire-resilience.stanford.edu. But if you just Google Wildfire Resilience at Stanford, it should be your first result.
It'll come right up to you, and you get to see a picture of that Stetson hat.
That's right.
Awesome. Great. Thanks so much again, Cody Hill, for joining us today. I'm Steve Wolf. You've been listening to The Fire Break, hopefully watching The Fire Break, because when you get guests like this, it's really more fun to see them. I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Be well. Be safe.